For more than 100 years, one narrow stretch of water in Central America has quietly decided how the world trades and who holds the power. The Panama Canal, an engineering masterpiece, a century-old shortcut that turned the map upside down. It's where global trade meets geography, and for decades, whoever controlled it controlled the flow of goods, money, and influence between oceans. But here's the twist. That control is slipping. Droughts, congestion, and climate shifts are choking the canal's capacity. Ships are lining up for days, costs are rising, and as this vital artery strains, a new challenger is stepping in. China is spending $50 billion to reshape global trade, building ports, railways, and alliances that could bypass the canal altogether. This isn't just an infrastructure story, it's a story about power, strategy, and the quiet rewriting of global maps. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying deep looks like this into how infrastructure and geopolitics shape the world, leave a like and share this video. It really helps the channel reach more curious minds like you. Alright, let's begin. When it opened in 1914, the Panama Canal was nothing short of revolutionary. A 51-mile shortcut carved through one of the toughest terrains on Earth. It instantly changed global trade, slicing weeks off the journey from New York to San Francisco and saving millions in fuel and time. It wasn't just a waterway, it was a symbol of American power and engineering genius. For most of the 20th century, the canal gave the United States an incredible advantage: military, commercial, and political. Even after it was handed over to Panama in 1999, most of its traffic still came from U.S. ports. Nearly three-quarters, in fact. But while the canal shaped globalization, it also created dependency, a single choke point that the world grew comfortable relying on. And now that choke point is showing cracks. Over the last few years, something unprecedented happened. Droughts hit Panama hard. The lakes that feed the canal's locks dropped to record lows. Ships had to carry less cargo or wait in line for days just to pass through. In some weeks, there were over 200 ships waiting on both sides, each paying tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in delay fees. Global supply chains, already stretched from the pandemic and political tensions, started feeling the ripple effects. And that's when China saw an opening. To Beijing, this wasn't just someone else's problem. It was an opportunity, maybe even a once-in-a-century one. China relies heavily on smooth maritime trade routes. It's the world's factory, and its economy runs on exports and imports. Soybeans, minerals, oil, electronics. Any disruption in a key choke point like the Panama Canal directly threatens that system. So, rather than waiting for the next drought or crisis, China began building alternatives. Not one single canal, but a network. A new web of trade infrastructure across Latin America designed to reduce dependency on Panama and quietly extend Beijing's reach into the Western Hemisphere. The centerpiece of this new system is a name you'll start hearing more often: Chancay. It's a deep-water megaport being built just north of Lima, Peru, financed and constructed with major Chinese investment. The port opened its first phase in late 2024, and it's already being called the gateway to the Pacific. Unlike the Panama Canal, Chancay isn't about ships passing through. It's about cargo convergence. Here, the biggest container ships in the world, the kind too massive even for the expanded Panama locks, can dock, unload, and reload efficiently. From this hub, goods can move inland through rail and highway networks, connecting with South America's industrial and agricultural regions. And that's where the next phase of China's vision kicks in: the Bioceanic Railway. Stretching across Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru, this planned railway would link the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, effectively creating a land bridge across South America. If completed, it would let Brazilian soybeans, beef, and iron ore reach China 2 weeks faster than they do now by sea through Panama. For South America, it's not just about faster shipping, and it's about economic independence. For China, it's about securing stable access to vital resources, while expanding influence deep into America's traditional sphere. And there's something almost poetic about it. A century after the US dug a canal through Central America, China is building a corridor across South America. Not by moving mountains of dirt, but by connecting economies and alliances. By the way, what do you think about this? Do you see China's investments as smart strategy? Or as a quiet form of influence that could reshape the Americas? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let's get a real discussion going. Alright, back to the story. Now, this isn't China's first attempt to challenge the Panama Canal. Back in 2013, there was a project so bold it almost sounded like science fiction: the Nicaragua Grand Canal. A Hong Kong-based company, HKND, signed a 100-year deal to build a canal through Nicaragua, 3 times longer than Panama's, deeper, wider, and capable of handling the world's biggest ships. The price tag? $50 billion. For Nicaragua, one of the poorest nations in the region, it was a dream, an economic miracle waiting to happen. For China, it was a potential masterstroke, a second canal under friendly influence right next to America's backyard. But it never happened. Environmental protests erupted. The planned route would have cut through Lake Nicaragua, a critical freshwater source, and displaced over 100,000 people. And then came the financial collapse. The Chinese billionaire behind the project lost his fortune in the 2015 stock market crash. Funding dried up and construction stopped before it even began. By 2024, the Nicaraguan government officially scrapped the concession. The dream was over, or at least paused. Yet even in failure, the project left a mark. It deepened ties between Managua and Beijing. In 2021, Nicaragua broke diplomatic relations with Taiwan and recognized the People's Republic of China. And while the canal never materialized, the geopolitical realignment it triggered still echoes today. That's the thing about these mega projects. Even when the concrete isn't poured, the political groundwork often is. So what does all this mean for global trade? Well, it's reshaping how the world moves goods, builds alliances, and measures power. For South America, China's investments bring infrastructure, jobs, and access to new markets. For the US, it's a warning sign. Washington has watched these developments with growing unease. Officials warn Latin American nations about debt-trap diplomacy, arguing that Chinese loans could lead to long-term dependency. They've urged countries like Panama and Brazil to stay cautious, especially as Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative gains traction in the region. But the truth is, many nations don't see it as a trap. They see it as an opportunity. China is offering what the West hasn't: massive, tangible investment in roads, ports, and railways. And with each new project, the world edges closer to a multipolar trade system, where the Panama Canal is no longer the single, irreplaceable gateway between oceans. Think about what that means. 100 years ago, geography dictated power. Whoever controlled the canals and straits controlled trade. Today, technology, infrastructure, and capital are rewriting those old rules. Instead of one path through Central America, we might soon have multiple routes across an entire continent, each backed by different powers, interests, and alliances. This competition isn't just about shipping containers, it's about strategic independence. It's about nations refusing to be bound by a single choke point, and superpowers racing to shape what comes next. The Panama Canal will still matter. It's too valuable not to, but it's no longer the only game in town. China's $50 billion challenge to the Panama Canal isn't a declaration of war. It's a declaration of intent. Through ports like Chancay, railways across the Andes, and partnerships stretching from Brazil to Nicaragua, Beijing is quietly redrawing the world's trade routes. The US may still dominate militarily, but in infrastructure and logistics, the plumbing of globalization, China is building something just as powerful: options. Whether these projects succeed or stall, one thing is certain. The global map of trade is changing, and the Panama Canal's monopoly is gone. We're watching a new era unfold, one where competition, not geography, decides how the world connects. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next deep dive into how economics, geography, and strategy shape our world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.